This course is presented to you free of charge by TTJ Tech Services of www.ttjtech.biz and by Stir It Up of www.stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U, not an I, so that's STURITUP.com. TTJ Tech Services and Stir It Up are pleased to offer this course to you to the glory of God and to the benefit of all those who listen. All right. Well, praise God. Thank you, Lord. Praise your name, Lord Jesus. Folks, welcome to our iPad for All Computing special session today on keyboards. Some of you have been waiting a long time for this, and we're going to deliver right now. We have another session tomorrow. All right, don't forget about that, because we're meeting 3 days every week now, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Glad to see you all here. We'll go back to the normal time tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern time, but 3 days a week. And then remember that the last week of class, there is no Memorial Day session on Monday the 26th, but we're going to have class the 27th, 28th, and 29th. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week. Not much more to go, folks, but lots to cover in that short amount of time. And so we're very excited to keep things moving. And we are going to be talking about keyboards today. First of all, I'd like to quickly go over again the various keyboard options that are available from Apple. And this does not include any of the third-party options that are also available. I don't know if Trainer Cliff will be able to jump in today due to his work schedule. If he is, he can definitely share later on some things about third-party keyboards that I may not know, because he's used a lot of keyboards. We call him the keyboard king, and for good reason. But we are going to share with you the Apple options that you have right now. And at this point now, it is pretty much dependent upon what iPad model you have. So I want to get the iPad mini out of the way first, because there's not actually a designated keyboard for that model. It doesn't really, it's kind of a logistical thing, right? The physical size of the iPad mini is going to prevent you from having a full-size keyboard. So if you wanted to use a full-size keyboard with an iPad mini, you'd have to get a Bluetooth keyboard. Apple, of course, makes one, and many, many other companies make them as well. But let's talk about the ones that actually do directly support various iPad models here. Now, if you are using, well, first of all, let me just say that the keyboards we're going to be talking about now with these other models are all in the family of what we would call smart keyboards. And as a reminder, what that means is that they physically draw from the iPad's power, so they don't have their own battery. Therefore, they never need to be charged. They also use a proprietary technology to connect the keyboard to the iPad with a smart connector, meaning there is no need for Bluetooth. So there's no pairing. The beauty of these smart keyboards is that, in fact, well, there's a lot of good reasons, but one thing is that there's no pairing, and others that there's no charging. And the third thing is that they then work right out of the box. And Trainer Cliff has talked about this. If you get a new iPad and you wish to use the keyboard even during setup, you can do that. Excuse me. Whereas if you had, a Bluetooth keyboard, you'd have to fully set the iPad up first before you could go into your Bluetooth settings and pair the keyboard. So this is a big benefit to these smart keyboards. Apple makes one for each of the models except for the iPad mini, as I said. Now, if you have an iPad A16, which is the brand new iPad that some people are calling the 11th generation iPad, mainly because it succeeded the 10th generation iPad. But the name that Apple has given to it is actually iPad A16. And that iPad along with its predecessor, the 10th generation iPad, they both use what's called the Apple Magic Keyboard Folio. Magic Keyboard Folio. That's a beautifully designed case. It's a two-piece design, so you can take the keyboard completely off if you wish to do so, and you can use the iPad just as an all-screen system with a back cover that protects the back, and the back cover also offers a kickstand which supports multiple angles, so you can position the iPad up at an angle. You can use it for reading, drawing, video calls, whatever. It works great in landscape mode. With the beautiful landscape front-facing cameras and so on. And again, that's the Magic Keyboard Folio. It also has a full row of iPad OS shortcut keys at the top, and it has a physical trackpad at the bottom for those who wish to make use of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Moving on then to the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, they both have their own designated Magic Keyboard with trackpad. That name, Magic Keyboard, is used across the line, so be careful if somebody says, well, I have a Magic Keyboard. Well, does that mean you have a Bluetooth Magic Keyboard that was designed to go with the Macintosh, or you have an iPad Magic Keyboard? You want to be very specific. So Magic Keyboard with trackpad is the one that is designed for the iPad, and then there's a specific model for the iPad Air, and there's a specific model for the iPad Pro. The older iPad Pros and Airs, they shared a Magic Keyboard model, but they've redesigned both now. All of them have the iPad OS shortcut row. The Pro model uses a haptic trackpad, meaning it's not a physical button. I don't remember about the Air, whether it does or not. And then the Pro actually has lighted, backlit keys, and it has pass-through charging. I think the Air model might also have pass-through charging, but I believe it lacks the backlit keys, if I'm not mistaken. I apologize if any of that information is incorrect, but the pass-through charging, thank you, Lord. The pass-through charging allows you to plug in your iPad to electrical power if the battery's getting low, using a port on the side of the keyboard. and that may seem like a small thing, because you say, well, I can still access the regular charge port on my iPad, so why do I need an extra port on the keyboard? Well, it's on the opposite side. So what that means is you can charge your iPad from either direction, right? Because when you're using the keyboard, it mandates, with that particular model, with the Magic Keyboard with trackpad for the Pro and the Air, it mandates that the iPad be in a certain position. There's really only one way you can use the iPad when it's in its keyboard case like that. And so that's then going to, if your electrical outlet is on the wrong side, you're going to have a problem, right? So if you want to try to use the iPad while it's charging. So this gives you that option to do that. So we have the charge port on both sides. And other than that, those are the keyboards that Apple is now making. They are cases as well. They're different designs, as I mentioned. The one for the iPad A16 and the prior 10th generation is a two-piece design, and you can take the keyboard right off, and you can actually flip it around too. So you have the soft part facing out if you want to. This is a very nice design. And then the Air and Pro are the Magic Keyboard with the sort of floating cantilever design, as they call it, the hinge that, again, gives you multiple viewing angles. And so they're both really, really wonderful devices. Best typing experience I've ever had on any keyboard ever, as far as I'm concerned. Again, I would stress that all of these are they all use the power from the iPad. They don't need Bluetooth. They don't have a battery. You don't have to charge them ever, nothing like that. Okay, so let's see. What I want to look at here, first of all, is I want to talk now about there are if you have an older model, there are some other keyboards that you might have, but they've sort of been discontinued. There was a Smart Keyboard Folio made until probably last year, and you can still get it at some third-party retailers, perhaps. And then older iPads like the ninth generation, eighth generation, they used just a plain smart keyboard. It was not a folio. It just was a top cover with the keyboard. So, there are some other models that may still be in circulation at different places, but nevertheless, that's the basic premise of all this. Now, when we talk about using these keyboards and actually, we're going to get into commands and all of that, but I do want to answer this question. What about the third-party options? And as I mentioned to you, there are lots of those, right? And some are smart keyboards and some are Bluetooth. So they do make, Logitech has quite a portfolio, no pun intended, of keyboards that work with different iPads. And sometimes there are even multiple keyboard models that work with a single iPad. And a lot of them do use smart connectors. They have the Combo Touch, which is a similar thing to what I mentioned for the iPad A16 from Apple, that it's a two-piece design. You can take the keyboard off. They have the rugged folio, the smart folio. They have a lot of different, or what do they call it? Slim folio, rather. They have, several different models that will work with their, with iPads and with different model iPads. So if you're looking at Logitech, you really need to just pay attention to what they say that which iPads they say they'll work with, and look at the features and see if it's something you're interested in. Let's see here. If you were to look at the Apple Store, they have quite a few of the Logitech keyboards as well. And there are some other brands that make keyboards. And then, if you really feel that it's the right thing to do, it's personal preference. There's no right or wrong. You could use a Bluetooth keyboard. I'm not a big fan of that for an iPad because there are so many wonderful smart keyboard options that also provide the protection, the case and so forth, and different viewing angles and such. So I like those better. Again, no battery, no pairing. To me, it just makes sense. But, personal preference. Maybe you've already got a case you really like. You don't want to ever take it off, and you want to use a Bluetooth keyboard, whatever. So the most important thing that I can encourage you, if you are going third party and not Apple, is make sure that the keyboard you are getting is designed for Apple. There's some keyboards out there, and usually they tend to be a little less expensive, right? That say that they are generic. They'll claim to work with, Windows, Mac, iOS, Android, all of these different platforms. And while it's definitely true that they will or might work with all of those platforms, when they are hybrid like that, you'll find some potential issues with the key mapping. In other words, what a certain key does on a truly genuine Apple or designed for Apple keyboard is not going to be what it does on this hybrid generic keyboard. So you may say, well, I read that this is supposed to be the second key from the left, but that's not what mine does. I have to use the fifth key from the left to do that or whatever. Well, that's because it's not designed specifically for Apple. So you want to get something that is exclusively designed for Apple. And certainly, again, with Logitech and so forth, you'll find ones that are specific to that. And so that's very important, I believe, because it's going to make things a lot easier for you when you're learning keyboard commands. All right, now let's start talking about keyboard commands, and let's talk about these keyboards a little bit. First of all, I want to make it very clear, iPad OS does not use traditional function keys. If you've learned to type on a Mac or a PC and you've been using keyboards for a number of years, you were thinking F1 through F12 on the top row, right? That's not a thing in iPad OS, okay? It just isn't. They don't really use that. And as a matter of fact, for a number of years, the keyboards that Apple designed specifically for the iPad, did not even have a row of keys above the regular numbers, right? So you had your top row was the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's it. And then no function keys above that. Now they've started including, and for many years, Logitech has already included, and some other companies perhaps, a row of keys above the numbers, but they're not F1 through F12. They're just called iPad OS shortcut keys. Okay. So it is true that in most cases, the top left one is the escape key. Moving in from there, you really need to consult your manufacturer's documentation to know what they do, because there can be some subtle differences. There's a lot of oftentimes similarity. You're going to find perhaps that F1 and F2 will decrease and increase the brightness of your screen of your iPad, respectively. And that's very, very common. F1 and F2 will decrease and increase the screen brightness. You'll find a lot of times that you might have a what would normally be the equivalent of F3 and F4 if we did have those, right? Again, make it clear that's not really a thing in iPad OS, but I'm using that as a frame of reference for you. Okay, so what we would think of as like the F3 and F4 keys, they might have something to do with like activating Siri or Spotlight search, something like that. And the next one over, where you would normally think of that as like F5, that might be like a focus mode to turn on Do Not Disturb or something. You're typically going to see keys for usually around what we think of as F7, 8, and 9 would be like your skip back, your play pause, and your skip forward. So these are like media playback controls, and then usually like a mute one next to that. Sometimes you'll have one to put the iPad to sleep. So it's just you're gonna need to consult the documentation to know exactly what they do. And for those who have sighted help, or you are sighted, you may be able to get a clue just from looking at the little icons on those keys, because they'll have a picture of what it is that they're supposed to do. But if not, certainly, documentation, give them a call, whatever the case may be. Again, to really reiterate this, I just used those names like F1 through F12, but that's not really what they're called. That's not really a thing in iPad OS. So I more did that as a frame of reference, because if you're familiar with it, you kind of know that, that's what to expect there. So that's going to be your top row on many keyboards now for iPads. And let's jump now to the bottom row, because all the rest of them are, QWERTY standard keys pretty much. Let's jump to the very bottom row. And of course, on the right-hand side, you have your T-shaped arrow keys. But let's go to the very, very left side, and let's talk about what these keys do from left to right. So the bottom left key of an iPad keyboard is typically the globe key on recent models. And that globe key is going to typically bring up alternate keyboards, like your emojis, for example. So when you are typing using the keyboard, if you want to insert a smiley face or a heart or something else, you would press that globe key, and what that does is it will bring up the emojis on the screen for you then, and you can press the key again to hide the emojis and go back to the just the regular keyboard. So when you're using these smart keyboards and so forth, it will hide the on-screen keyboard, and then what we can do is I'll talk about how to show that in cases where you need to, but what we can do is press that emoji key at the bottom left there, the globe key, to bring up the emojis when we want to use them. The next key, so second from the left, that is the control key. Second from the left is control. Moving on, our third key is option, and our fourth key is command. So again, let's talk about those again. Globe, followed by control, option, and then command. That is the left-hand side from left to right. The bottom left key is globe. Some people call this the function key. That's what it used to be for years. Some keyboard models, it still may say function or FN. Really, again, there's not much use for that in iPad OS typically. But globe key, bottom left. The second from left is control. Third from left is option. Fourth from left is command. All right. Now, just to the right of the command key, you're going to find the space bar. And that's very easy to tell. And then going to the right of the space bar, you have another command and another option. So command and option going from left to right after the space bar. And then you have your arrows. All right. Now, below all of this is the giant trackpad on many models, and it is a smooth surface. You can press that trackpad and use it as a pointing device instead of using the touch screen. Some people prefer to work that way, others not so much. And I just ignore it. It really doesn't bother me. It's just there. I know proper typing, and I just avoid it. It's not really an issue. But if you find that you're running into it and it's causing things to happen that you don't want, you can go into your accessibility settings and VoiceOver, and you can disable the it says ignore trackpad. It's a VoiceOver setting, and it's not actually disabling the trackpad. It's just ignoring it, so it won't do anything when you tap on it. Basically, it won't have any effect as long as VoiceOver's on. So that is under your VoiceOver settings, pretty far down, almost near the bottom. And that's again, a way to disable that. You can also adjust the sensitivity of the trackpad, things of that nature. Now the Pro models have a trackpad that actually does not move. It's haptic, meaning you get a little vibration when you tap it, so it feels like it's clicking, but you'll notice when the iPad is off and so forth, it won't move at all. And it's really never moving. It's just the feeling. So other models, it's a physical button. But that's the trackpad. And as I said, we're not going to spend much time with that. There are specific trackpad gestures that you can use. And the trackpad is represented by like a circle on the screen and so forth. But again, we're not going to get into those. We're going to focus kind of on the rest of the keyboard. Of course, the most common thing we would do with this keyboard is type when we're in, notes, pages, anywhere that accepts text, mail, whatever. And it's the standard QWERTY layout when you're typing. So I would encourage you to get very familiar with that if you're not already. We did begin offering typing lessons on our YouTube channel. We have been focusing on other things, so we've not done any new ones for a while, but we may continue that here in the coming months. I think there are 3 of them up there already, 2 or 3. And so you can get started with that. And as I was telling you before, when you use a smart keyboard like the Apple Magic Keyboard Folio or any of these, what you're going to find is when you're in the typing position, and like with the Magic Keyboard Folio, you have to extend the keyboard physically in order for the iPad to know that it's in typing mode. So it is entirely possible to have the keyboard physically connected, but still use on-screen typing as well. But when you extend the keyboard to its typing position and you raise the kickstand, the iPad knows that you want to type on this mechanical keyboard, and so it hides the on-screen keyboard. And you'll notice that there's no keyboard on the screen now. All this time, we've been working with the software keyboard up until now, but that's not what's going to happen when you extend the physical keyboard. It's going to hide that. And if you decide that you want that on-screen keyboard again, it depends on the model of keyboard you're using. So like with the Magic Keyboard Folio, all I have to do is move the iPad out of the typing mode, and then that on-screen keyboard will reappear. But also, there is typically on the screen, next to the edit field, if you start swiping to the right, you're going to typically find options for dictation and keyboard, and sometimes even for emojis right on the screen. And so if you want to show the keyboard, you can just double tap on that keyboard button on the screen. And this is useful if you're going to be using things like keychain and autofill and that sort of thing, where you really need that on-screen interface. You can show the keyboard and do that. And another way to do that, some keyboards actually have a physical key in that top row. Remember, we talked about that row of iPad OS shortcut keys. Some keyboards have a physical key on or near the upper right that will show and hide the on-screen keyboard as well. So again, check with your manufacturer's documentation on that. So that's basic typing. Now, I want to start talking about keyboard commands. I am not someone who does a lot of navigating with the keyboard. Again, there's no right or wrong. It's personal preference, but I'm not a fan. And the reason is because I like the touchscreen. I really, really enjoy the touchscreen. I type on the touchscreen, but if I'm writing longer documents, long emails, then sure, I'll type on the keyboard, but I'll still continue to navigate using the on-screen navigation, just using the touchscreen. It's not very hard to just reach your hand up a few inches and swipe and tap and double tap and so on. So that's how I prefer to do it. Now, there are those who prefer to navigate with the keyboard, and that is certainly possible. And so we're going to talk about how exactly that is done. And I would just say, the reason we've focused so much on the touchscreen first is because you cannot really appreciate and get an understanding of the layout of the iPad if you don't first deal with the touch screen. Okay, you want to learn that first. You want to understand the split screen, that things are set up, with columns, things on the left and something else that you've selected then on the right, or, a sidebar or a floating tab bar, those kinds of things like that are not going to make sense, nor are they going to be nearly as easy if all you're using is the keyboard. But there may come a time when you want to navigate a little bit with the keyboard. So when it comes to using VoiceOver on an iPad with a keyboard, there are two different sets of commands that you're going to want to understand. And this is true with most screen readers, I think, but Apple handles things a little bit differently in some regards. But there are two basic types of commands. There are VoiceOver keyboard commands, and then there are iPad OS shortcut keys or keyboard commands, keyboard shortcuts. And it's probably pretty obvious to most of you, especially if you've used any other screen reader on pretty much any platform ever. You kind of understand what I'm talking about, right? There are commands that are only going to work when VoiceOver is turned on, and they're specific to the VoiceOver screen reader. And then there are general iPad commands that anybody can use, regardless of whether they use VoiceOver. All navigation on an iPad is going to be done with VoiceOver commands. Sighted users are not going to navigate with the keyboard. Now, they may navigate with the trackpad if they choose to, but they're not going to navigate with the keyboard, really. All right. And so pretty much all navigation is going to be with VoiceOver specific commands. That means they will only work when VoiceOver is turned on. Now, what is a VoiceOver command? Well, basically all VoiceOver commands will have the Control and Option held down in combination with something else. If, for example, you want to move to the next item, like you would swipe to the right with one finger on the screen, you can do that with VoiceOver by pressing Control, Option, right arrow. And so what that means is you're holding down Control and Option on the left. Remember, it's globe key and then Control, so it's the second one in from the left on the bottom row. You hold down Control. The one right to the right of it, next to it, is the Option key. Hold those two down together, and then press the right arrow with the other hand. And so much are those keys used that Control and Option together are known as the VoiceOver keys. And for short, we say VO keys to save some time, right? VO, as in VoiceOver. And so if you hear somebody say VO right arrow, that's what they're talking about. Control, Option, right arrow. In other words, the VO keys, the VoiceOver keys, Control and Option in combination with the right arrow. VO left arrow, well, same thing. VO space, Control Option space. That's how you activate an item instead of a double tap. You can use VO space or Control Option space. Now, it is possible in some scenarios to use the caps lock key as a voiceover key instead of Control and Option. And some people like that. I prefer to do the Control and Option, but it's, personal preference. In most cases, one or the other, you can use either or interchangeably. But when we say VO keys, that's what we're talking about. Typically Control and Option, or in many cases, the caps lock key will work as well. So you could do caps lock space or, whatever. But I like to do Control Option space if I'm going to do that ever, which I hardly ever do. But VO space is your activation key. So you move to the right with VO right. You move to the left with VO left arrow. That's the equivalent of swiping left and right with one finger. And then VO space is the double tap gesture. You also can do some other ones. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. You might remember from our voiceover class, and probably we referenced it early on in this class, that you could get into a voiceover practice mode. On the screen, it's a 4-finger double tap, but you can also do this with the keyboard. I'm going to get some original sound going here. And I don't know as we need the screen share right now, but
more button.
I've got my iPad here with its Magic Keyboard Folio. You're going to hear some noise probably as I move the iPad around, so I apologize in advance for that. That's probably pretty noisy.
A screenshot of displaying Kathy Long's avatar, audio muted. A screenshot of a computer program with a black background. And
what I'm doing is getting my iPad into the typing mode, which it now is. So we're going to, I'm going to show you, if I press
starting help, to stop help, perform a 4-finger double tap or 2-finger scrub, or press escape on the keyboard.
Now what I did to do that was VOK, so Control Option K. So now I can press keys and hear what they do. And voiceover keys, it will describe what they do. So let's do VO right arrow.
Right arrow, move to next item.
Okay, and you didn't hear it say Control and Option because I did it so quickly, but
Control Option left arrow, move to previous item.
Here's VO space.
Op space, activate.
Here's another one.
Control Option Shift M, perform long press.
Okay, the long press, or the double tap and hold, you can do that with the keyboard by pressing Control Option Shift and the letter M as in menu, because it usually brings up context menus. So Control Option Shift M or VO Shift M. Is there VO Shift space for anything?
Space, activate.
No, that still says activate. Here's another one I know, VO dash.
Op hyphen, magic tap.
Okay, your 2-finger double tap or the magic tap is done with a VO and the hyphen or dash key. Oh, let's see. Here's another one I like, VOT.
Cap T, red text style.
Yep, Control Option T will read the text style. Oh, let's see. I don't know if it'll read this one to us.
Command.
Yeah, it's not going to read that because that's not a voiceover command. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I think, VOH.
Cap H, home.
Yep, that'll take you back home. So will the escape key in most cases, but VOH is the go home command, go home gesture. And I don't know. Let me see. VO M, I think, brings you to the status bar.
Cap M, move to status bar.
Yep. Now I thought maybe there was something for Control Center, but I don't remember.
Option, toggle announcement history.
Okay, that's interesting. That was VON.
Up here, control, label item.
VO slash is the label item. Do we have...
Cap C, red character.
Okay, so I'm not going to get into all those, right? I'll explain that in a minute. But, so you can see there's a lot of voiceover commands. They all use the Control and Option in combination with other things. Now, how... Let me try one more that I think might be something, but I'm not sure.
Command M, move to next same heading.
Okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, I need to cover those. Praise God. Thank you, Lord. I would have forgotten. Okay, so we did Control Option with a lot of these different things. H to go home, all these different ones. You can also use shortcut keys to move between on-screen elements like you would use the rotor. Now, what I'm talking about is like, you know
Tab
how,
Q, toggle single letter
and
quick
see, they
nav.
even have single letter quick. Okay, so you know how there's like you can set your rotor, for example, to headings or form controls or links on a web page, and it's not just web pages, but that's one of the best examples I think of it. And then you can swipe down to go to the next heading, swipe up to go to the previous, and so on. Well, you have keyboard commands for that. They're voiceover commands, so they're going to use the VO keys, but you're also going to add the command key. So, for example, if you want to move to the next heading, you press VO Command H. That's Control Option Command and the letter H for heading. And if you want to move to the previous heading, you just add the Shift key. So it's VO Command Shift H. So let me demonstrate.
Control Option Command H. Move to next heading.
And if we add the Shift key,
Shift Command Shift H. Move to previous heading.
and you have to have the voiceover keys held down. It just happens to read it that way. But notice if I press Command H
Command
without the VO keys, see, it doesn't do that. You got to have the VO keys down. But again, now let's do VO Command L.
Command L. Move to next link.
And of course, previous adds the Shift key. Here's another one, M.
Command M. Move to next same heading.
Same heading, in other words, the same heading level. And again, we are adding Control Option Command. I think F is
Command F. Move to next frame.
frame. Okay. What's form control? J.
Command J. Move to next control.
Yeah, that's like if you want to move to the next button or edit field or whatever the next form control is. I think B might actually be button.
Command B. Move to next item with bold text.
Oh no, that's bold. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Here's another one. VO Command E. That's useful.
Command E. Move to next misspelled word.
And again, you can add the Shift key. Now, if you want to not have to press these VO command keys with all those things, you can press VOQ to turn on single key quick nav.
Cap Q. Toggle single letter quick nav.
Okay, and you can turn it on and off that way. And when it's on, what will happen is now you can press, for example, just an H or a Shift H and not have to hold down VO command with all of these. Okay, let's see.
Cap J. Move to linked item.
Okay, yep, VOJ works just like it does on the Mac, for those who know that one. Move to the linked item. You never know what that might be unless you try it. Usually you can kind of predict, but And then I would also say that the VO keys can be, like, if you use what's called, what do they call it? Arrow key quick nav. You can press the left and right arrow keys together with no VO keys.
Left arrow, right arrow.
It actually doesn't say it, but it will toggle the basic quick nav. So when that kind of quick nav is turned on, you don't need the control and option keys or the VO keys. You can just move with the arrow keys, and it's supposed to automatically turn off when you enter into an edit field, so that you can work within your edit field. And I'll demonstrate that. So you're hearing a lot of keys right now, a lot of commands. VO right arrow, VO left arrow, VO space, VO J, VO shift M. How am I going to remember all these? Well, you typically don't need to. First of all, as I said, I use the touchscreen for just about everything, so I really don't need to. But even if you want to use these, the nice part is you can look them up anytime you want to do so. And the way you do that is to go to Settings, go to Accessibility, go to VoiceOver, and then go to Commands. And when you are in Commands, you will see an onboard reference for all VoiceOver gestures and commands. And you can narrow it down by choosing just to view the touch gestures or just to view the keyboard commands. And you can learn and review all of the VoiceOver keyboard commands that there are. Now, I would point out that these are specifically VoiceOver commands. Remember, I said there's another kind we're going to talk about in a few moments too. And I am a stickler for specifying which one is which, because you want to know whether they're a VoiceOver command or not, so you understand that. I always really put a lot of emphasis on that. But you can look up the VoiceOver keyboard commands in Settings where I just described. And that can be very, very helpful. So, we have a lot that we have not covered even, that are in there. You can read through all of them and see what they are. Now I'm going to press the escape key.
Escape. Escape. Stopping help.
That brings us out of help. So now if I do a VO right arrow.
Minimize meeting. You are using enhanced encryption. Minimize.
And VO left. See, I'm in the Zoom app now. All right. Now, I know that I can press VOH to go home. I would not usually do that. I would press I would do it on screen. But I'm going to just do it to show you that it can be done.
Picture-in-picture displayed.
Okay.
More button.
And we're on the home screen. I touch somewhere.
Mute my audio, video, TV, news, settings.
See, there's the home screen.
Double tap to open.
All right. So I also want to talk about some of the other kinds of commands. These are the non-voiceover, just general iPad OS keyboard commands. And many of them are going to be specific to whatever app you happen to be in. These are commands that you might be familiar with. And I'll give you some examples. In many apps, pressing Command B will turn on bold text or turn it off. Command I will turn on or off the italics, and so on. And then you'll see Command C to copy, Command X to cut, Command Z as in zebra to undo, Command Shift Z as in zebra to redo, Command V as in Victor for paste. So a lot of these, and pay attention if you're a Windows user or a Chrome OS user or something, it's not Control like it is on those other platforms. On Windows, you're thinking Control C, Control V. No, Apple, it's Command C, Command V, and so on. Okay, but a lot of these are similar across apps, and then some are app specific. I want to talk specifically for a moment about messages, because messages is very interesting. I'm going to open up a message.
Doc, photo, page, doc, messages,
And
edit, Jeff, fam, kid, mom, Tim.
Let's find a message to trainer Cliff or Sarah or the instructor group, something. Here's Cliff. Okay.
Cliff liked nope.
Now.
App message, insertion point at end.
Okay. Notice you heard a little boop, that little sound there. What that indicates is that the quick nav is now off and I can use the arrow keys to navigate within my edit field here. Okay. When I leave the edit field, quick nav will turn back on.
Apps button.
And that way,
messages, your iMessage.
I'd be able to move without using the arrow keys. But
the app message text
focus is still in the arrow key in the edit field. I can press the control key to stop and resume speech, just like you would do a two-finger single tap. I'm going to type a message to Cliff here. Let's just type on the physical keyboard now. There's no on-screen keyboard.
Dictate, dimmed, button.
But notice there's a dictate button, so here's the edit field.
Message, text field, is editing.
Just to its right is dictate. It's grayed out because we're on a Zoom call.
Dictate,
can't do that.
But keyboard, button.
There's a keyboard button, and I told you that would show the on-screen, right? And then if...
Cap I, the, I'm.
In this app...
Text animation, button.
They do still have the predictions, the suggestions, the text animation.
Dictation, dimmed.
And
dictation,
notice, too,
dimmed.
if I press the globe key...
Text field is edited. Smiling face with open mouth, ghost face, frowning face, winking face.
Right, it brings up all the emojis. Press the globe key again.
Emote.
Now it's hidden them.
Conversations, Cliff.
And I can...
message, tech insertion.
I can type my message. So let's type on the physical mechanical keyboard here and say, hello.
Oh, space.
Two spaces
space.
to put the period in there for me. This is a test.
Period. Test.
Now, I'm going to insert a new line by pressing the return key.
Send message.
Whoa! What happened? You can't press return to insert a new line in messages. In other apps, you can, but in messages...
New mail.
Do you like that sound?
Notification.
Praise the Lord.
Mail. Now. Zoom.
Okay.
Dismiss.
So in messages, you cannot use the return key to insert a new line. Other apps you can, but not in messages. So if I want to insert a new line in messages, I have to press Option Return. Okay, I hold down the Option key and press Return.
New line.
And it says New Line. I'll delete that.
New line.
There's a backspace key, as Windows users would call it. Apple calls it delete. They do not call it backspace, but it does go back like a backspace. There is no forward delete on an iPad keyboard. Or on many Mac keyboards. Only if you get the extended one with the numpad does it have the other kind of delete, I believe, in it. So we don't have that, but we have this delete. It goes, takes the previous character away, just like the delete does on the, the software keyboard on screen. All right, so we sent our message to Trainer Cliff there, and you see how that worked. So, we press return when we want to send our message, and I just wanted to point that out. Now, every app has its own unique keyboard shortcuts for iPad OS, nothing to do with VoiceOver, they're just there. And if you want to see a list of the keyboard commands for the specific app you're in, you can press and hold the command key for a few seconds, and it'll bring up a popover that has all the keyboard commands for the current app. Did you hear that?
Messages. Heading.
Now, let's see if I can touch.
Swipe up. Reply to message. Command R button.
Okay.
Swipe up or tap messages. Heading.
Notice the
Swipe
first
up or
one it
down.
has is reply to message, and it says Command R. Listen again.
Reply to message. Command R button.
Let's keep going.
Edit last message. Command E. Tap back message. Command T. New message. Command N button. Show details. Option. Find. Command F. Go to next conversation. Control. Tab button. Go to previous conversation. Control. Shift. Tab button.
Okay.
Big. Option. Command 1
Oh,
button.
and those are like the
Swipe up or down to
text effects, right? Like, Option Command 1 is the big and so forth. Now,
edit messages.
if I want to,
Edit. Undo typing.
I'm in the edit
Command
section now.
Z
There's
button.
Command Z.
Emoji. Globe. E. Search button.
All right.
Emoji.
Let's dismiss this by doing a two-finger scrub. All right.
Message.
So I can do this in any app that I'm in. I can press and hold the command key for just a few seconds. It will bring up this overlay of all the different keyboard commands that are specific to that app. And again, anybody can use these. This has nothing to do with VoiceOver. Another thing that anybody can do, regardless whether they use VoiceOver or not, is they can press Command Tab to switch to the previous app. You know how we have our four-finger swipe left and right to go to next or previous app? Well, we can press Command Tab, and what we can actually do is we can literally press and hold the command key while repeatedly pressing the tab key to cycle through open apps. So this is really useful, and that's another one that I wanted to talk about. All right, now I'd like to talk about editing with the keyboard, because this is actually one of my favorite things to do with the physical keyboard. We can do this in messages, but I'm gonna leave messages and go to notes.
Doc. Notes.
Notice I did that all on screen, not with the keyboard.
Button. Heading.
I'm going to go back to my note that we all worked together with the other day.
Note. Matthew. Note. Message 04/.
This is not it. Let me go.
220. Notes. Search. Show sidebar. Devotionals. Science. Tap Titan. TTJ. Selected. Note. Spring 20. Class test. Linda. Class test 2025. Modified Thursday. This is a very quick test. Welcome to class. Actions available. Selected.
That seems to be the one.
Note. Class test 2. Note.
Double tap in that edit field, or I could have done a VO space once I got to it. I'm in the edit field now, and I'm going to go to the top of it.
Class test 2000.
And I'm going to teach you some editing commands that you can use with the physical keyboard. First of all, if you press by itself, now remember, these are standard iPad editing commands. They will work on the Mac as well, so they do not use the VO keys. Anybody can use them, so there are no VO keys here. If you want to press the left arrow or the right arrow key by itself, that is how you move from character to character. Now, again, for this to work, we have to be inside of an edit field. Quick nav has to be off, which it should automatically turn off when we open up an edit field. And now I can press the left arrow and the right arrow to move character by character. And I can't go left because I'm already at the very beginning of the document. I'm pressing left and you're hearing nothing. But if I press the right arrow, it's going to read the character it passes by, just like when you use the rotor.
Cap C, L, A, S, S, space, cap T.
The word
Tango.
class test. If I want to go back to the left, I'll press the left arrow. It's going to pass over that letter T again.
Cap T, space, S, S, A, L, cap C.
And we're back at the beginning.
Charlie.
All right, if I want to move word by word, it's Option right arrow to go to the next word and Option left arrow to go to the previous word. So Option key, remember, is third from the left. It goes globe, control, Option, and then command. So we're going to do Option. Option right arrow.
Class. Test. 2000 : that is a very.
And we go back to the left.
Emphasis orange, bold, system font
Oh
regular.
yeah, praise God. Remember that? We did the orange and the highlight that go back to the left by word with Option left arrow.
Very. A is this. 2025 : title 30 point
Now,
bold, system font regular.
If we want to move line by line, it's simply the up arrow or the down arrow. Down arrow goes to the next line.
New line. This is a very quick test. Welcome to class. Misspelled. Body. 18 point. Not bold. System font regular. Indentation level 0.
Now, we're going to see if it actually is misspelled. I don't think so. I think it's because where I have the insertion point is partway through a word, and that's what it's detecting. By the way, you are, remember, like you're moving the insertion point here, not the voiceover cursor, although the voiceover cursor is following, but you're moving the insertion point. So again, this is not a voiceover. These are not voiceover commands.
New line.
Move down.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Body. Indentation level 0.
Let's go back up with the up arrow.
New line.
Line by line.
This is a very quick test. Welcome to class.
I'll press Control to stop that. Now, if we want to move to the beginning of a line, it's Command left arrow.
This.
We're on the word this. If we want to move to the end of the line, it's Command right arrow. And remember, Command is that key just to the left of the space bar. Fourth from the left. Command right arrow moves to the end of the line.
Class period.
All right. If you want to move to the beginning of the entire document, or in this case, the entire note, it's Command up arrow.
Class test 2025. Title. 30 point. Bold.
Finally,
system font regular.
Command down arrow will move you to the very end of the note or document.
New line. 18 point.
And
not bold.
this,
system font regular.
These commands work in Pages, in Notes, in Mail, pretty much anywhere that is editable. Certainly any of the Apple apps, and most third-party ones as well, will work this way if they're coded properly. And so you can use these keyboard commands in any of these situations. Let me go back to the beginning.
Class test 2025.
Now,
Title.
what if, I'll press Control there, what if I want to select some text? Well, all I have to do is add the Shift key to any of the previous examples that I've shown you. So if I want to select a word, I press Option Shift right arrow. And I can go back Option Shift left arrow to deselect it, or I can just use the arrow keys and it'll deselect. So let's say I want to change this and I want to say the quick red fox, or I want to say the slow red fox instead of the quick brown fox. Let me go to that line.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
All right, for orientation's sake, let's make sure I'm at the beginning of the line with Command left arrow. And I am, it didn't read anything. And now I'm going to use Option right arrow to go past the word the.
The.
Okay.
Body. Indentation level 0.
Now I'm going to use just the right arrow by itself to make sure that I'm exactly where I want to be.
Space.
Right there, between the space and the Q. That's where I want to be. Now I'm going to select quick brown. So I'm going to do Option right arrow to move by word, but I'm going to add the Shift key in there. So it's Option Shift right arrow. We're going to do it twice to select quick and to select brown.
Quick, brown, selected.
Okay, we've got two words selected, and I'm going to change that to slow red.
D.
There should already be a space.
Space, F.
Let's read that line now.
New line. The slow red fox jumps over the lazy dog.
Very easy, very simple. And again, Command C to copy, Command V to paste, V as in Victor, Command X to cut, all these different options. Command B for bold, right? So it's easy to select some text and bold it with Command B, all of that. Now, one of the things I mentioned is, that you can go to the beginning and the end with the um, Command up arrow and Command down arrow. So let's go to the beginning again.
Class Test 2025.
And I want to check and see if there are any misspellings. So VO Command E. Now that's a voiceover command, but it's going to allow me, like I'm using the misspelled words rotor, same kind of thing. VO Command E. And there are none. And if I use the on-screen method, let's put the keyboard away.
Keyboard empty. Keyboard visible.
Now the keyboard's visible.
Return. Last test cap C.
And let's turn the
Charlie.
rotor.
Calculate checklist item misspelled words. Swipe left or
Again,
right checklist calculation characters.
We can confirm that there indeed are no misspellings. So that's a wonderful thing. So these are some commands that you may want to know for editing purposes, right? Again, just to review those, you can move by character with the left arrow or the right arrow. You can move by word with option left arrow and option right arrow. You can move to the next or previous line with the down arrow or the up arrow, respectively. You can move to the beginning of a line with Command left arrow, move to the end of the line with Command right arrow, move to the beginning of a document with Command up arrow, and move to the very end of a document with Command down arrow. And again, if you add the Shift key into any of those, you will be selecting the text that you pass over as well. And I would also say, I think there may be one that has, this may be one of the few times where that globe key as a function key will do something, because I think you can do I think it's like function command up arrow or something. One of those that'll move by, I think it's like by page or something. I haven't seen it work in all scenarios though, and I don't really use it. But again, these, if you add the Shift key, then you'll be selecting the text as you pass over it as well. So very useful when you need to select, make corrections, make something bold. So like the process, would be, let's say I want to select a word, option, shift, right arrow, and then I could, Command B, and it'll turn on the bold. Then I would just press an arrow key to deselect the text that's currently selected, and everything else will remain not bold then. Just that word that I selected is what we've now turned into bold. So this is the basic procedure for editing. It's going to be very useful when we get into Pages next week, because it's, when you're creating long documents, this is definitely going to be easier. You can easily move when you're going to see, because of the way that Pages functions, Pages is beautiful. I really, really like Pages, praise God. I know trainer Sarah does as well. Trainer Cliff and Sarah and I, we all use Pages. We all like it, and we all think that it's the best word processing app and desktop publishing app that there is out there, really. But it does take some getting used to, and one of the things that happens, because you can have really long documents with multiple pages and so on, is your voiceover cursor and your insertion point can get out of sync. And so when you're navigating, sometimes it seems like there's nowhere to go, and you have to figure out then, well, I'm in the wrong place, and there's ways of troubleshooting that. And actually, Apple has added a new feature recently that they call it, what do they call it? I'll have to look it up when I teach it next week, because I don't remember off the top of my head now. But it's like a new view that specifically formatted to make that even easier. But at the end of the day, if you're using a physical keyboard, you don't have to deal with any of that. You just arrow through your whole document if you want to, and everything just follows really nicely. And again, when you're writing long documents, this certainly makes sense. That's even me being, someone who prefers the touchscreen when I'm writing documents in Pages. Absolutely, I use the mechanical keyboard, and that's why we're teaching it here and now, because it really does make things very easy, very, very useful, and user-friendly for apps like Pages. With the Numbers app, you can do something with the keyboard that really there's no other way to do it, and that is to basically fill down, like if you have a formula in a particular cell and you want it to go the whole way down the column, all the rows there, all the rows, you can use a keyboard command and do that. And so there are some things that the keyboard enables, that really take things to the next level here in productivity. So as we get into these productivity apps in the final weeks of this course, you're going to see that. And we have 3 sessions dedicated to pages next week. 2 basic teaching sessions and 1 experience lab. Tomorrow you're going to have files. We're going to learn about, how to work with the Files app and iCloud Drive and other, file sharing services and external media and things of that nature. So we're going to make sure we cover that before we even get into pages. But we wanted to cover keyboards also because we think that's so important for this. So what I want to do is, go to the other instructors and then go to questions. But I hope this has given you an overview. The most important thing you can take from this, right? Like anything else, by now our teaching philosophy here at TTJ. We're not going to sit and give you an hour-long lecture of every keyboard command, right? First of all, I don't know them all. I'm going to be the first to admit that. I don't know everything anyway. I'm a work in progress. Praise God. Christ is in me, the hope of glory, and that's how I do what I do. But, I'm a work in progress, but I don't know it all, right? Secondly, I definitely don't know all the keyboard commands because I don't navigate that way. I use the touchscreen more often than not. And thirdly, there's just too many. Even if I did know them all, it wouldn't make sense to try to teach all of them to you because you're not going to remember them in that way, right? Learn the ones you really think you're going to need most critically. Like the arrow, for me, it's like the arrow key editing, with those different things and some of the basics like Control V, Control C, those kinds of things. And then what you want to do is know how to get the help you need when you need it. So, once again, to remind you, if I want to look up voiceover commands with the control and option, if I want to look up voiceover commands, I go to Settings, Accessibility, Voiceover, and then I go to Commands. There, I can view all commands. I can view touch gestures. I can view keyboard commands. I can view braille screen input commands, all these different kinds of things, whatever I want to see. That's how I would recommend studying and learning the voiceover keyboard commands for your iPad. Now, if I want to learn iPad OS specific commands, one of the things that seems to be a bit hard to come by is those editing commands that I taught you. You can Google that. But that's why I wanted to make sure I really stress those. I don't know that they're necessarily in that popover. I don't remember them being, but maybe that's changed. But if I want to know the keyboard commands that are specific to any app, not voiceover, but just the general ones, when I'm in the app, I press and hold the command key. 2 or 3 seconds, just a few seconds, and you'll hear it. The screen will change. The little popover will appear. Swipe through it and read the commands that are available. And when you're done with it, you can scrub out of it with a 2-finger scrub. And that's how you can learn the keyboard command. And by the way, some apps, especially when you get into these productivity apps that have their own like user guide and onboard help system, like Pages and Keynote and so forth, they will have an entire section usually in their help system dedicated to keyboard commands, okay? And some of them even have a section for voiceover users as well. But you'll find a section dedicated specifically to keyboard commands for those apps. And other apps, even like Zoom. Zoom has keyboard commands. The YouTube app has keyboard commands. Some of the third-party audio editing apps we use, they have keyboard. So you really want to take a look through the onboard help systems for any of these when you're using them, and you may be surprised what you find. It's pretty incredible. So I think this hopefully gives you an overview of keyboards on the iPad.
Thanks for joining today's session. Didn't get your question answered? Have an additional comment or feedback? Email us info@ttjtech.biz or info@stiritup.com. And remember, stir is spelled with a U. That's STURITUP.com. Or check out our websites for additional resources. That's ttjtech.biz or stiritup.com. And remember, subscribe to the newsletter when you're there. That way, you don't miss out on any upcoming announcements or events. Thanks for joining us. God bless, and see you next time.